Hello and welcome back to Friday Minis. Now, if you've been sort of tinkering around with networks and network settings, you'll probably see one set of IP addresses very often, and that is IP addresses starting with 192.168 and something else at the back. Have you ever wondered why that is so, and what is the meaning behind it? Well, these are actually private IP addresses, so let's take a closer look at what they are. Firstly, before we can talk about private IP addresses, let's try to define IP addresses in general. Basically, an IP address, which stands for an Internet Protocol address, is sort of an identifier of every device connected to the internet. Do bear in mind that these are not unique identifiers. IP addresses can change for a variety of reasons, but generally, once you're online and you are trying to download some information from somewhere, well, that's what that piece of information needs to use to find its way to you. However, there is something slightly different about certain ranges of IP addresses, and these are our private IP addresses. What this means is devices connected to the internet will usually have two IP addresses. One for the public use, its actual IP address identifying itself to the world, as well as a private one for use within its own network. Several different ranges have actually been set aside for this purpose, and the first one, of course, is what we've already discussed, those starting with 192.168. The last two bytes are allowed to vary, and what this gives us is 16 bits of different addresses. In other words, 65,536 different addresses. This is generally enough for most home networks, but if we're working with something on a larger scale, say an office, you may need to look at ranges that actually offer more. Another range of private addresses start with the numbers 172. Now, even though the last 3 bytes can change, really the second byte does not sort of change freely. Only the lower 4 bits are allowed to change freely, the top 4 are fixed. And what this means is you get a range, for that second number, running from 16 to 32. This gives us about 1 million addresses to play with because this is a 20-bit number. In case that is still not enough, well, we can have an IP address range starting with 10, with the last 3 bytes allowed to vary freely. What this gives us is a 24-bit number, or over 16.7 million different combinations. I'm sure that's enough, right? Anyway, these are your 3 IP address ranges, for private use, be it setting up a home network, setting up an office network, anything like that. Now, there is one more range of addresses that we haven't yet covered, and those are the ones starting with 127. Now, these are also a set of addresses that will never be assigned online. However, their purpose is a little bit different because, well, they are meant to perform what is known as a loopback. What this means is any packet going towards any IP address starting with 127 will end up at the same computer in which it originated from. So yeah, technically you have about 16 million IP addresses pointing to your own machine. Of course, nobody else could use those addresses because they will point to, well, their own machines. Anyway, even though any 3 values actually work here, you will find that the most common version of this address is actually 127.0.0.1. This is also sometimes known as localhost. So yeah, there you go. That's the reason why those numbers come up so often. That's all there is for this episode of Friday Minis. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV on NERDfirst.net. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my work and are feeling generous, you can shoot me a one-time donation on PayPal or sign up for a recurring one on Patreon. Of course, you can simply like, comment, and subscribe. You know the deal. For more videos, links to my channel and a related playlist are on screen. Thank you for your support.